Welcome to Talking Giants the final player profile and projection. We've done 34 players up to this point on a 53-man roster. One of them even got cut in Corey Clement. So we've done 34 players, 17 podcast episodes, but we finish it off with a guy who gets his own episode. And that is one Daniel Jones, quarterback for the New York Giants, 6'5", 221 pounds, 24 years old, entering year 3, pivotal year 3. Justin, he was a very controversial first-round pick out of Duke, but he jumped onto the scene and had a very fun rookie season, but not without his flaws. 26 total touchdowns, but he had 12 interceptions and 18 fumbles. 18 fumbles. That's a lot. That's like record-breaking. They fired his offensive coordinator, head coach, play caller, and Pat Shurmur, and brought in Jason Garrett, who admitted that his main focus was cutting down the turnovers with Daniel Jones, something that I vehemently disagree with. Well, that worked. He cut his fumbles in half per touch and also his interceptions if you take away the Ingram popped-up interceptions. But with that came his touchdowns going from 24 in 12 games to 11 in 14 games. Just a pitiful number. 11. That is a very pitiful passing touchdown number. They were good games, but nothing that really excited you from his rookie year. Like it did his rookie year. And that's with him being the most efficient deep ball passer in the NFL last season. It'll no doubt be better this season with new weapons and a second year in the system. But the question is, how much? And I worry that with the O-line / play calling more so, it will have a max of good and not great.
Where do you even begin? Where do you even begin with Daniel Jones? I usually like to begin with some numbers, Bobby Skinner. So, Daniel Jones last year, 6th lowest rate of pass plays of 15-plus air yards, despite being one of the most efficient deep ball passers. 11 sacks in under 2.5 seconds, which was tied in the first with the NFL with Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles. 3rd lowest rate of pass plays of 15-plus yards overall just produced. And the 3rd least amount of total offensive plays run. I mean, if you just want to talk about a stat that's bad, just in general, I mean, the Giants are an offense that somehow sustains drives at somewhat of an average rate. They're a team that also doesn't produce points, and they also don't run a lot of offensive plays. So it's just overall, it's head scratching where we stemmed from last season, and we said, it is not fair to evaluate Daniel Jones based on his ability to be the starting quarterback for the New York Football Giants based off of what he did last year.
Well, it kind of doesn't matter in year 3 with, at some point, surroundings in a sense, and I hate to say this, but it doesn't matter. And I point to the Jets with Sam Darnold. Nobody had it worse than him, but I also agree with the Jets moving on because, after year 3, we're coming up on, the last year of your rookie contract if you don't get your 5th-year option extended. So it has to be good this year. Even if there's other reasons why, it just has to be good this year. It doesn't have to be great, but it does have to be good. And it can be, the addition of Kenny Golladay is huge. We talk about him being the most efficient deep ball passer. And even when he wasn't the most efficient one in 2019, he was a good one. And it was what I pointed to. Like when people are like, well, what is he elite at? I would say his accuracy downfield. I would always point to that. Well, when they kind of close the offense down a little bit from 2020 from compared to 2019. You saw it became extremely efficient. But it wasn't even just efficient because they didn't do it a lot, so they only took it when it was wide open. No, they were all contested throws. Think about Golden Tate, on fades from the slot. It's basically the only one that was were wide open was the Darius Slayton one to start the season versus Pittsburgh. And then the other one was the Austin Mack one when they ran 4 verts versus Washington.
Yeah.
Those were really the only ones where it's that wasn't a beautiful throw. And that's even including maybe his best throw of the year was dropped by Darius Slayton. Remember the 65-yard pass he threw versus the Bengals?
Yeah, he dropped it, yeah.
So basically, with the addition of Kenny Golladay, we did see Jason Garrett in preseason. And, we argued against, hey, there's the staples of this offense are the same. They ran sticks 7 times. Watch Mark Schofield's breakdown, and they ran. Almost every play was had a curl concept as the basis of it. Even the 4 verts touchdown to Caden Smith had a curl on the left side, but nonetheless, he's got to be able to push that ball downfield and be more risky. And we know he has that in him. Obviously, you don't want to have the dumb ones like that preseason interception, which we'll talk about his weaknesses in a second. But getting that ball downfield, but while at the same time getting the ball to Saquon and getting the ball to Shepard underneath, who he completed 80% of his passes. So it doesn't need to be all or nothing. You know, there is a happy medium that Daniel Jones can get to.
Yeah, and he also does need to be better in the intermediate part of the field too. But look at his quarterback rating here. His quarterback rating from 20-plus yards last year was 132.5. His quarterback rating when throwing the ball between 10 to 19 yards was 68.4. Between 0 to 9 yards, it was 81.8. And behind the line of scrimmage, it was 79.9. Nothing was higher than an 82, than an 81.8 when he was throwing less than 20 yards down the field. So that is the best part of his game. It was the best part of his game last year. And you can make an argument that it was the best part of his game because he only did it on 10% of his passing attempts. But guess what? I'm not looking for a QB rating of 100. I hope, in a way, Bobby, I hope that Daniel Jones' QB rating is not repeated of 132.5 at the end of this year because I want the Giants to take more risks. I would rather Daniel Jones throw an interception where he's throwing 40 yards down the field versus 5 yards. Because at least if you throw 40 yards down the field, well, then that's 40 yards lost for the opposing offense, and you're taking more risks. I would rather this offense be an explosive play offense rather than just 10, 11, 12, 13 play drives, which it's so tough to sustain in the National Football League. So,
and we look at numbers like, and I don't want to turn this into a Jason Garrett PPP either, but deeper concepts, when we say we'll move, push the ball downfield, it doesn't mean just like, okay, on this play we are going deep. Deeper concepts have checks. They have other short routes in them. It's not all or nothing. Like even if you run 4 verts, the running back checks down. And I remember they ran 4 verts versus the Seahawks with the Colts. Guess what? Colt McCoy ended up throwing the ball to Alfred Morrison. So even a play like that it's not all or nothing. Really, the only all for nothing plays, which the Giants do more than most other teams, are those 8-man protections, 2-man routes. Those are all or nothing plays and are like, the Giants, I will give them credit, as old school as they were, did have some good plays doing that and moving the ball downfield. But concepts like stick, these all curls or mostly curls, they can be covered well with man coverage and putting like a robber inside linebacker in the middle. And with that, those blocking schemes also aren't like, they're not meant to block forever, which leads to more sacks. And you look at Pat Shurmur's offense was way more aggressive. 2019, the Giants had 7 less sacks than in 2020.
Yep. And
I think they had better offensive linemen. Kevin Zeitler might have regressed a little bit, but like I think overall they like Gates was an upgrade over Halapio. You can argue, anyways, but nonetheless, is like it wasn't some huge difference. So the idea that Garrett called it like that is because they don't have the O-line. Well, guess what? That way didn't work either because things were covered up in man coverage and they were very like the sack in the preseason game was like that ball needs to come out quick, but everything was covered. So do you want him to force an interception or take a sack? He took a sack, and rightfully so. So he needs to be able to move the ball downfield this year, but also with it, like in his weaknesses, get the ball back down to the checkdowns quicker.
Yep.
Like we saw in the preseason game, there was a pass where it was a sack. It wasn't a good blocking, but he should have got the ball out to Booker. Like he should have got the ball out to Devontae Booker. He was open. It would have had some yak. So he does need. That's the thing he needs to get better at, is that when he does have his eyes downfield, to know when to come back down.
Yep.
And you saw him get a little better as that from his 2019 season, and that's kind of how Caden Smith emerged towards the end of that year.
And that processing still does need to be quicker, and we're not asking for the offensive line to block for 5 seconds here, which a lot of fans are probably listening to this screaming, well, Jason Garrett can't throw the ball down the field when you don't have an offensive line. I agree that Daniel Jones should not have the ball in his hands for longer than 3 seconds. So here's the breakdown of QB rating by the time of the time before the release. So in 2 seconds or less, 79.8 passer rating. 2.1 to 2.5 seconds, 97.9. 2.6 seconds to 3 seconds is 87.4, and then 3.1 seconds or longer is 58.7. And that's really the main difference between Daniel Jones. I would say Daniel Jones and the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. We're talking the Lamar Jacksons of the world, the Kyler Murrays, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys get astronomically better when they hold on to the ball for 3.1 seconds or longer. I don't think Daniel Jones is ever going to be that guy, where you saw it a few times against Dallas where he improvised and he extended a play and he improvised and threw a ball to Darius Slayton on the sideline. I just don't ever think that that's going to be a strength of Daniel Jones. You saw it in the preseason game, how it was a poorly thrown ball or a poor decision, whatever take you want to have, when he was rolling out to his right and when he was on the move. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be that kind of quarterback to improvise extremely well like the top guys in the league. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but in the games in which Daniel Jones actually did have some of the most highest air yard per attempt totals last year, it was during that Eagle game. And he got the ball out in like 2.5 seconds that game. So the games in which Daniel Jones was best last year, in terms of getting rid of the ball the quickest and throwing the ball down the field, those games kind of like in line with each other there. So it's not separate entities. You can have the best of both worlds. And when you have a contested catch king like Kenny Galladay, it's sometimes just as simple as throwing the ball up to him, back shoulder fade, contested catch, however you want to approach it. Sometimes it's that simple. You're muted, Bobby. Good job.
Kenny Galladay should be a huge add to him. And again, and part of this is he was a 6th overall pick. You got to trust him to be a great quarterback. It's year 3. You have to trust him. Like, you can't be coaching him scared of interceptions and turnovers. If they happen, well, then you get to move on. And I get that, we're fans for the New York Giants for life, where, these guys sometimes coach scared because they're coaching for their jobs. But you cannot coach this guy scared. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to the Giants. Like, let him be who you drafted him to be, the way Pat Shurmur viewed him. Like, view him that way. You don't even if you don't view him that way, view him that way.
And I think towards the second half of the season, the Giants started to. Now, you have to also consider the second half of the season and the middle part of the season. Well, second half of the season. That's when Daniel Jones was hurt. And we had Daniel Jones' trainer on this offseason, Mickey Bruckner, who said even when we interviewed him in the spring, that Jones was still kind of nursing back that ankle injury that he had and gaining back strength. I think he's full strength now. But that was, those were quite the gnarly injuries that he suffered towards the latter end of last year. But in weeks 1 through 9, Daniel Jones averaged 6.73 air yards per passing attempt. It's kind of bad, kind of putrid. But then Daniel Jones' final 5 games of the season, he averaged 9.84 air yards per passing attempt. And that's quite...
That's where we want him.
That's quite the dramatic difference, and that's a nice balance. That's not, I actually think that's a lot, Bobby. Like, if you look at a season total, there are guys that have 8, 8.5, and and you're like, oh, that's a good amount. Like Russell Wilson, I think, is around there too, and Russell Wilson definitely liked last year to air it down the field. They're going to look to become a little bit more of a quick passing offense this year. So 9.84, that's a lot. And part of me thinks it has something to do with Daniel Jones' lack of mobility. So I don't know why it was such a dramatic difference, especially when you do consider that Daniel Jones was hurt. But I do want to find the stat.
Well, Baltimore, Dallas, they let them kind of go downfield. And like those were the 2 games where we're like, actually, I kind of like what we saw out of Jason Garrett in those 2 games.
Yeah. So before Daniel Jones' injury, too, kind of like I was saying before, the offense was actually performing at an average rate EPA-wise between week 6 to week 12. I'll even see if I can throw that graphic on the screen right now by Ben Baldwin, who does like the EPA calculations by defense and offense. And EPA is basically like expected points added and how much is a group doing to put points on the board or to prevent points from going on the board on the defense side of the ball. And in week 6 through 12, there was like a theme brewing, at least in my talk and analytics blogs, and then also some of my points on the podcast, where I thought the Giants' offense was close to being average when you consider Daniel Jones' legs, and which maybe we can go to next, Bobby. Daniel Jones' legs, him starting to throw the ball downfield a little bit more. The offensive line was gelling. Andrew Thomas was getting better. I thought that there was a point pre-Daniel Jones injury, pre-stupid Cincinnati game, where I thought the offense was like starting to become average. Even though they weren't putting a lot of points on the board, they were moving the ball a lot better and there were more opportunities for them to score. So if you're somebody who's optimistic about this team, you're optimistic about the final 5 games of the season. They let Jones air it out a little bit more, and the fact that stretch between week 6 to week 12, that stretch of 6-7 games, the Giants' offense was average EPA-wise, and that's an advanced stat, and that's not just necessarily a points scored. And I know a lot of fans like to say, oh, the advanced stats hate the Giants. Well, not during that stretch.
Well, we will talk about his running and his weaknesses to close out, but before that, this final PPP is sponsored by our friends at Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. It's back to school time. We want to make sure you pack the essentials to have the best year yet. The Manscaped 4th Generation Performance Package is just that. Things are opening up. Be ready for whatever's in the daily schedule for you. It's the perfect package for your package and includes the brand new Lawnmower 4.0. Fellas, go for the valedictorian of ball trimming and join the 2 million men worldwide who trust in Manscaped by going to manscaped.com with the code GIANTS. School's back. You got to get the Performance Package 4.0. I mean, the Lawnmower 4.0, that's really the thing that you need the most. Like, that, they have the crop preserver, the ball deodorant, the toner, some free gifts, some, like, boxes and stuff. But really what you want is that, like, Lawnmower 4.0, and all that other stuff is really good. I mean, it's got a 7,000 RPMs with their motor. It's got a nice light so you could do it in the shower. If that's the way you roll. I don't really use it in the shower, I'll be honest. I'm a very big, stand over the mirror and just sweep afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, get the Lawnmower 4.0 and all that stuff. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code GIANTS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code GIANTS at manscaped.com. This year, graduate with a degree and clean balls from Manscaped.
Don't touch Bobby's mop or whatever. What do you call it? Broom.
It's called a broom.
There, I got it after
Someone's never taken care of themselves. All right, so let's talk about his weaknesses, and then we'll talk about rushing as its own. Pocket feel seems to be like the biggest one, which also leads to his other biggest weakness, which is fumbles. Like, I mean, we talk, the interceptions. He cut those out in the second half of the Giants season. One interception, and it was off Evan Ingram's hand. Like, he did cut those out. So, but the pocket feel leads to fumbles, and the fumbles have been a real issue for him. Like, it got a lot better, but it's still not perfect. I mean, he had 9 that I would accredit to him. One was a handoff Wayne Gallman didn't take, and then the other one was the Evan Ingram reverse for a San Fran. But still, that's that's top of the league still, and that's with missing 2 games. What gives me hope with that though is when we're like the best O-line games where he was healthy. It was the Eagles, the Bengals, and those 2 games. And
Cowboys,
we saw him work
the 2 Cowboy games.
Well,
sorta.
The O-line was bad in the first Cowboy game, and then the second one he was still injured, not as much, but like those where you saw him like wow, he's really maneuvering the pocket well. Like there was one sticks out in your head like a pass to Golden Tate on the sideline. Like he was working the pocket well in those games. Stepping up into that, deep pass to Darius Slayton versus Cincy. And those were the games where the best O-line is. So it could be partly due to O-line bad play, but also like he just needs to get better at maneuvering the pocket. And, that will help him in the fumble department as well.
Yeah, he does have this tendency, and it's so strange how it's the total opposite of what the critique of Eli Manning was towards the latter end of his career, where Eli Manning was just so shell-shocked, and I can't blame him for getting hit for all those years because the offensive line was just so bad. It is crazy how even you look at the offensive line right now, and I feel like we prefer the offensive line that we have right now, even though we could argue that they are below average. And then you look at those lines that Eli had, and it's like it's night and day. So his problem was that he would just look down too much, too soon. And Daniel Jones does not look down. It takes him too long to work his way back to the line of scrimmage and process that type of way and move within the pocket, have that feel. And that's something that, again, Mickey Bruckner, I may even put it in the card to go check out that interview, and I have in the timestamps of when the interview starts. I would go check out that interview because Mickey Bruckner and Daniel Jones' trainer this offseason, he was very, very candid on what they are working with Daniel Jones. And it is that pocket, not necessarily pocket mobility, but pocket awareness and how to manipulate the pocket and how to just, it's a feel thing, and that's one of the things we even talked to Jones' trainer 2 off seasons ago, right, Bobby? What was his name from QB school?
Anthony Boone.
Anthony Boone. Did I get QB school
QB
correctly?
Country.
QB Country. And Anthony Boone, we talked about with Anthony Boone.
Or Duke QB.
Another Duke QB. There you go. We talked with Boone about, what is pocket mobility, pocket awareness? Is that something that you can work on? Is it something that you can measure? Something is like, no, it's kind of just like a feel thing. It is a feel thing. So he's got to get that feel down, and you hope in year 3 he can do it. And you talked about the turnovers. PFF actually graded him quite well this year. Like if you look at a chart that is production, like EPA wise, but then PFF grade, Daniel Jones is like the standalone quarterback that has extremely, extremely poor production because the Giants don't score points, but actually a very positive PFF grade based off of the 2020 season. And I think that kind of exposed PFF's grading system, at least based on quarterbacks, where the large majority is, do you turn over the ball, do you not turn over the ball?
Yeah, it's like they had Dwayne Haskins rated better than Daniel Jones' rookie year, where it's like, well, because Dwayne Haskins didn't have like a lot of turnovers. But yeah, he was.
Yeah.
If you use your eyes, like, okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't use PFF grades. Other weakness.
Under pressure.
And with that, the scratch your head dumb turnovers. They popped up in that preseason game, and like the 2 versus Tampa, which I think those were a wake-up call, those 2 versus Tampa. Because those were just like, what the hell? Like, what were you thinking? Like, he has to eliminate those. Like, games can be won and lost on eliminating those. And again, this does not mean I want him turning into like a guy who's afraid of throwing the ball downfield or taking chances. I want him taking chances. But just the ones that make no sense, where it's like, what were you trying to gain out of this play? Those are the ones he needs to cut out. Because it's just, sometimes it's just like, I don't know what happens to him. It just goes mush and just tosses the ball up like he's playing 500.
Yep. I feel like you saw that from Eli early in his career too, which I feel Jones...
Through his whole career, but still. I don't want to use Eli's negatives as like a positive for Daniel Jones.
No, but man, it's such a combination where you do not want the WTF disaster throws and disaster moments. But I would rather see those interceptions manifested in taking chances rather than WTF moments.
Yes, exactly. If you try and put fit, with a good pocket, try to fit a ball into double coverage. Okay, sometimes it'll go really good and sometimes it'll go bad. But it was like the Tampa ones, it's like he's being dragged to the ground. He's definitely not going to be able to get a good ball off, even if there's someone open. But it's like, guy 15 yards down the field, and it's like just throwing it up. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
The preseason one wasn't as bad as those other ones, but still, like getting rid of those dumb ones.
Yep.
And I know there's been debate about that preseason one. I do view it as a really bad one. Injuries. That's another weakness.
Mm-hmm.
He's missed games the last 3 seasons. At Duke, he broke his collarbone, came back really quick. He's tough as hell. The sprained ankle his rookie season, and then the hamstring and / ankle sprain this past season. But we can't really give an analysis on what does he have to do to stay hungry? I would say don't run him in between the tackles on purpose, because that's what both of his injuries have come on. Now the Cincy one was a soft tissue, so it's hard to blame it on being inside the tackles. But like the Green Bay one his rookie year, you remember that? I mean, I remember that play distinctly. He got hit the N on the NY, popped off his helmet on that play. Like it was like a power O read option, and he just goes head up with Za'Darius or Preston Smith, and wins that battle on 4th and 1, which is like, it's gritty as hell. And then go watch the rest of the game, and like, this guy missed 2 games after this. Some of the throws he was making after that. But it's like those plays we can avoid. Like, I don't want to get rid of the zone read, but get rid of those plays where it's like, let's just bash you up the middle like you're Cam Newton.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree. And the problem is with his toughness, and he's tough as nails. You're never going to question Daniel Jones' toughness. But the thing is when you come back from that injury and you come back before you're healed, well, then you're not performing as well as you should. And yes, you're still a better backup option than to Colt McCoy or Mike Glennon, but that's still, if you're not performing at 100%, you're not as effective. And Daniel Jones is, does not have the talent of like the Mahomes and the Rodgers of, you would take 80% of Rodgers over, every other quarterback in the NFL. So Jones isn't like that. So that's the issue about him getting hurt. And then if he misses 1 or 2 games and then comes back before he's fully healed, that's the issue behind that.
Let's talk about his running. I mean, we don't have to really go in depth with that, but use it, man. Like that was with Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris. Like with Saquon, Kadarius Toney. Like, I don't think he probably won't have as many yards because they started really relying on his running ability, for a stretch in the season. But like, this guy should be known as one of the best rushers in the QB or in the league, and his stats show it too. Like, he averaged 6.5 yards per carry. Like, that's near like top 5 in the league for running. For QBs, yards total. Like, he is one of the best running QBs in the league. Like, it's not Lamar, but he's one of the best running QBs in the league.
And you got to consider how many games his legs were a non-factor. It was kind of the beginning of the season where I think they were hesitant to run him with Saquon. And then when he was hurt towards the latter end of the year. So the Giants had 8 running plays of 20-plus yards in 2020. 4 of them were by Daniel Jones, which is kind of crazy. And if you look at rushing EPA amongst quarterbacks, he was ranked 11th in the National Football League. And again, you have to consider the games at which Daniel Jones was not running and he was still ranked 11th in the National Football League. The games at which he was top 5, top 10 in quarterback EPA in general, not just rushing EPA, but when you include passing and rushing and overall quarterback performance, the games at which he was top 10, top 5 in the National Football League is when he was rushing most effectively. So I say that is the path for Daniel Jones to become not just an average quarterback. The path to him becoming a good quarterback is using his legs, and I am adamant on that.
Yeah, there's no reason to not use him. You can't be afraid of injuries. That you can, like I said, avoid the in between the tackles QB power runs. All right, so it's year 3. It's big. I hate the word excuses because it's like you make a rational argument and then it's like, well, you're just making excuses. Like Jason Garrett isn't an excuse. We broke down Jason Garrett and why he was bad. Last season. We'll give him a clean slate this season. And it was like, well, the wide receivers don't have separation. It's like, well, part of that is because Jason Garrett's scheme is built around receivers winning one-on-one constantly and not putting, defenders in conflict. But anyways, not a Jason Garrett PPP. It's big. I mean, if it's not good this year, QB is in the talks.
Yep.
Next draft. And I know people repeat, they got 2 first-round picks. Maybe that's to trade up and draft a QB. It's like, if they're drafting a QB, it's not going to be with Dave Gettleman. So that's not why they made the draft day trade. So, but it's, I finished off last year's PPP with Daniel Jones, was like, don't be a dick. Give this guy a chance. A lot of you are just looking to tear this guy down. Now it's year 3. There's really no more chances. It's time to make something happen. I made fun of the make it happen, but it's time to make something happen. You have good players. It's probably going to be in a bad scheme with a bad O-line, but you've got good weapons. Use those weapons. Be the 6th overall pick, and I'll be happy at the end of the year. But I do worry that there is a cap of good for the offense this year and not a cap of great, which is a shame.
Yeah, and that's something that I've said all offseason is I'm shooting for average. Think of this team winning 5-6 games last year, and the offense was the second worst in the National Football League. Now think of this defense even improving to become a top 10 unit, and think of what this team can do if the offense is average. I'm talking 16th ranked in the National Football League when it comes to points scored or total yards, however you evaluate offenses. So for one more final time in this PPP season, root for the guys in blue, root for Daniel Jones, and go out there and shock the world, kid.
Shock the world. All right, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening to these PPPs. It's always a fun time of year when they finish. It's the close out of camp. So yeah, but it's a lot of people. It's going to be a big culture shock when it's like Talking Giants isn't in their podcast feed every single day of the week going to work. So sorry about that. It'll only be 3 of the 5 days going forward after this next week. Sorry about that. Sorry, buddies. But thanks for supporting. The numbers have been good, consistently good with the PPPs, which is cool. More so on the podcast app than YouTube. YouTube is very player. Is this player someone I want to watch or not? But anyways, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. Until then, let's go Big Blue.